Okay. Okay. This is a podcast, and it's a podcast which has been assigned me by the Arts Council to do as part of my developing creative practice into looking at AI and its impact on artists and specifically on disabled artists. Now, I've been doing a bit of research and a bit of work and playing and generally messing about with AI now for about off and on for about 9 months and gone down the rabbit hole of it. And I thought it was a good way to get the information out of me was to have someone come and interview me about what I found, what I've explored, and maybe even what I think. And to that end, I've invited the lovely Deborah Williams, OBE, to interview me. And let's not call it a formal interview. It's more of a chat, really, isn't it, about what's going on and
Yeah.
see if we can come up with any interesting fizzy ideas. I think it's a lot of it might be controversial and some of it might be, I think the modern term is spicy in terms of the ethics of art and things like that, but we shall see. So welcome, Debs. Debs I've known for a very long time, as well as a fantastic artist and theatre maker and producer and everything else in creative. She's also probably one of the most important activists and leaders of change around diversity and disabled artists as well in Britain, in work she did at the Arts Council and also at Creative Diversity Network, really guided by data, which is kind of why I brought her in, because she's got expertise in the field. So hello, Debs. How are you doing?
Hello, Simon. I'm okay. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm a bit nervous about doing a podcast. This is not me at all. But anyway, should be fun.
Well, look, you know how to talk, so podcast is about talking.
Yes.
It's about talking, expressing, having a bit of a chat, and that's all we're going to do is have a bit of a chat. See how long it takes us to work through a few things, thoughts, and ideas, which some you've shared with me, some I've shared with you. So
Yeah.
that's all it is.
Yeah. Let's do that.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
So I'll start then by sort of asking you, what the hell have you been doing? What have you been doing, Simon?
What
Talk
have
to
I
us
been
about what
doing?
you've been doing.
Okay. Well, before I say what I have been doing, let me set the background of what
Go on. Yeah, yeah.
what brought me to this, which might explain why I'm doing what I'm doing. A long time ago, I was a student at Edinburgh University doing artificial intelligence and computer science. And I spent 4 years doing that, learning how to program, learning about robotics and visual AI and all of those sorts of things. But it was, of course, a long time ago. It was I graduated from that in 1991. I came out of it not wanting to do it for two reasons. One, because I wanted to be an actor and do stupid things that actors do. And that was a very stupid move, but I did it. And the other was I kind of found AI philosophically bankrupt at the time.
Wow.
At the time, because it just didn't work as a thing. I was saying, this is not intelligence.
Okay. Okay.
What we're doing is there's a thing called the Chinese room problem, which says that what a computer is doing is essentially equivalent to the Chinese room problem, which is a man in a room who does not understand Chinese is given symbols through a letterbox through one door and he has a rule book and looks at the rule book and finds the appropriate symbol to chuck out for the other letterbox.
Okay.
On
So
the
a slightly racist analogy.
yeah. Well,
Which
I don't think. Yeah, in the sense that Chinese to someone like who doesn't speak Chinese,
yeah,
because on the outside are some fully empowered Chinese people, probably now working on DeepSeek,
yeah.
who have a questions asking the room system, sticking questions in,
Yeah.
and they're getting the questions they want out. But what's going on inside of it is
Is
not.
the nonsense.
It's a nonsense. It's not. It's not intelligent.
It's
It
not
doesn't
intelligence.
aware
So
that
has that changed? Do you think that that's changed?
not from what I've seen. Because what's
Oh, that's
happened in
fine.
the last 30 years, all that's happened, because we were talking about neural nets as they were called then, now they're called large language models, but with
Mhm.
neural nets is that the internet happened and an absolutely vast quantity of data was available to stuff into this, into the systems. And also the chips were now available in order to process them, which were initially just gaming graphics processing chips. I know they're coming up with newer ones now, but that's how it started, the GPUs. So the tech moved on, and now we're seeing the emanation of that. But I still don't think it is intelligence. I think there is more to come around it. I'm not saying computers can't become intelligent, and they certainly can fake it very, very well, but I don't think epiphenomenally they are intelligent at the present moment. But there's several problems. One is that we don't really know what intelligence is in our own selves, do we? So it's difficult to define what it is in the first place.
Yeah,
There's ways of defining it. I know Sam Altman at ChatGPT has
has done a lot
his
of work around it.
lo and behold, is a way of generating profit, and hype things up. But just because it looks like it doesn't say it isn't. However, that won't limit the impact of what's coming
Of
because,
what's coming.
yeah.
So what have you actually then been doing? So we've got the background, so we know sort of where you started
I'll
in this.
say I'm midway through this. So I'm
Okay.
playing with tools, first of all. So things like Runway, which makes films, Kling AI, it makes films, Mid-Journey, it makes images, ChatGPT, obviously, I've tried with other models, but philosophically, they're all essentially the same. So I'm not, because I'm exploring it rather than wanting the best model, I'm not going to
Mhm.
recommend the best model now. It doesn't really matter to me which one it is. I've been engaged in watching the race to who's going to be the best for the cheapest and things like that. Perhaps we'll get onto that. Udio, which is a music composing app, which you can do very good things. I use it to send people's songs on birthdays now because it's fun for that.
Okay.
That's really good fun. Musicians listen to it and go, "Yeah, it's clever, yeah, but it's not that good." And I think experts will look at many of these things and say, yeah, it's interesting, but at this present stage, it's not that good. It's impressive when you first encounter AI tools and you go, wow, I didn't know computers could do that. But as a competition for humans, then none of those apps are there yet. But the biggest word in AI at the moment is yet. So I think that will
Okay.
come.
Okay.
So,
So where does this then? So what is the impact then on disabled artists? Why is it important for disabled artists to be in the conversation, to be engaging with the tools or exploring it?
well, I think there's several factors to that. One is, on a simple level, these tools can quite possibly be used for access at a much cheaper rate than we're currently being charged at the moment.
Okay.
I'm an actor. I'm interested in making theatre. So, for an example, would be like captioning, which at the moment Stage Text does a service where you pay a few thousand, they come in and do a caption performance, or you can spend quite a lot of money captioning yourself using projection mapping and such like, and having a dedicated person, stage manager, to press the button repetitively where every time someone speaks. That, having done productions like that, I know how hugely expensive it is, and that's a barrier to disable people's audiences and artists to come together and make work if it's really expensive. Also, there are things like the questions I've been asking: can it audio describe areas? Like for blind directors, can it describe rehearsal rooms? Can it describe performances? And then, of course, and can it even do sign language interpretation? Will there be a sign language robot in the future that can do sign language interpretation, which won't cost 400 quid a day? That's those are simple problems which I think disabled theatre makers certainly face in terms of
Hmm.
getting. I'm apologies to lots of sign language interpreters, etc., who are making a good living out of it, but that isn't my personal worry. That's more about how are disabled people being served and how can we get the price down. That's one thing. That's a simple thing. the data on which AI, I think, is being trained on is the internet, and how are disabled people represented on the internet in the same way they were represented in culture for thousands of years, badly. So the data which these so-called intelligent entities are being trained on is excluding disabled people. If you try and get an image of a disabled person on Mid-Journey, for example, it will try to airbrush out disability. It will try and ignore disability. It's a very hard job to get them to do it. I think I posted online a picture of a boy with Downs, which I
Yes.
tried to do, and it made him a lovely, angelic, not Downs boy.
Yes.
And I tried very hard not that to happen, but I just couldn't find it. There may be prompters better than I that can do it. I caveat with that with that thing, but disclaimer. But there's the no one's considering disabled people when they're training the models at all, and
Okay, so
that's the problem.
so that's really interesting, and that throws up for me two things. One is about ethics, and you apologize to BSL interpreters, and that costs conversation. But the other one about that I'm interested in is the prompts stuff, because actually how do disabled artists get, is that the way in for disabled people and disabled artists into this conversation? Is it for them to become prompt masters? That's, I've just made that phrase up myself, but is that a role? Is that one of the jobs of the future that you think might come out of this?
It will be for a time. We can talk about and by time I probably mean the next. Let's be optimistic. The next 10 years.
Okay.
So that it could be that they will be, in terms of trying to, if they want to become an expert on disabled representation in prompts, that will be a journey up a hill, a hard hill, unless we do some activism with these trainers, with the people who run the models, be it Claude, Anthropic, or whatever,
Mm.
Meta, etc., to try and say, come on, guys, I know you don't do diversity anymore, but you really should, because you're wiping out a whole group of people from the future of representation in computing
Uh,
and culture. So I think there might be some activism combined with some specialist prompters to find a way through it, then that could well be a thing,
And
perhaps.
could that then come back to, the financing thing? So then is that then an opportunity, again, two-strand opportunity for disabled people to start making an appropriate living out of AI, out of data, out of large or small language models, whichever ones people use. And then also, is there then the opportunity for then, the diversity conversation now currently driven by sort of global, neo-political opportunists is changing, and he's heading in the opposite direction to the one that you and I have been heading in and others have been heading in for the
Yeah.
last 30 years. So is that would there then be an opportunity, do you think, for that to then come back round to, well, the majority of the world is going to be old in terms of Western world. They're all, again, a large percentage are going to be disabled people. You don't want to engage with people who are not, of you. So what's going to happen to all these old white people, old white disabled people in the future if they're not being represented now?
That is a massive job of activism to be done.
Mm.
And whether you can I hope you can earn a living at it. Not earn much of a money living out of my activism, but others have. You've earned a bit.
Mm.
Um,
Just
but but yes, that could be. But I have to say we haven't got much time,
yeah.
because there's something on the horizon which happens, and we don't know when it's going to happen. But it is a thing called artificial general intelligence, and very shortly after, artificial superintelligence, and that's when the models start to operate independently of human beings, and that we don't know what that is. We don't know what it is, and that could be the very wondrous beginning for humanity, or the very end of humanity. And I'm not exaggerating in those stakes. We could talk about that in a bit.
so we have there are two bits of language. We've been using AI as a term, or
Yeah,
artificial intelligence as a term, and then there's this other one called generative AI.
yeah.
What's the difference between the two? Is there a difference between them, or is this just wordplay?
No, there is a programming difference in that generative AI is based on neural nets, to use the old-fashioned term. It's about essentially replicating the representation which we think happens in the brain between brain cells along neurons. It's a modeling of that and giving that information so that slowly but surely, and we don't really know how they do it,
Mm.
it builds up a representation of whatever modality we're training it on, whether that's text or visuals or audio, whatever it is. It's building up a representation, and it's kind of a black box system.
Yeah.
It's called the transformer algorithm, and that's what was invented, I think, in 2016,
Yeah.
which made all this possible. I mean, they've been exploring it for a long time before, but that was the thing that's kick-started it and made it uh,
Real.
fly.
Yeah.
But before that, and largely my AI degree a long time was this. In my degree, we we looked at what was called classical AI, which is using computer programs in a more traditional sense to work out the algorithm for a specific task, whether
Mm.
that's computer vision, getting a computer to recognize objects through a camera, or getting a robot arm to pick up a brick in a closed environment. And that was where it started at.
Yeah.
In fact, robot arms are a good way of describing the difference in that a robot arm will sort of, in the classical AI, will calculate what it needs to do to each particular motor in the arm and the angle and the mathematics to precisely execute the action
Yeah.
in a very specific way, which isn't necessarily very open to change, but
Yeah.
that it learns how to do that. But if you put your arm in a way, it will get confused. That was the classical AI. Now, through generative AI, robot arms are much better, and that's probably how they're training self-driving cars, etc. now, and certainly Tesla's robots, is they let the robot teach itself by giving it an environment and saying, just do it. We will give you the objective. We want you to do that. Just keep making a billion mistakes until finally you get the
You
right way
finally
of
got it.
doing it. And that's
And
how
then
it works in generative AI.
that is then bottled, so to
Yeah.
speak, and presented as norm.
And presented as norm. There's another side of generative AI because there's the training, and I just described the training,
Yeah.
but then there's the thing that happens after training, which is responding to the data interactions which it then has,
Yeah.
which is a relatively new thing, which I think is come on, I think, in the last 6 months, really, to my knowledge, is they're starting to allow it to learn from its interactions as well and sort of retrain it.
How does this all work then with art and creativity? Because creativity is it's within all of us as individuals. It's in the mind, it's in the body. I believe it's in the soul. And as disabled people, we have some of us have all of that, some of us have none of that. So how does this work with disabled people, disabled artists? I mean, are they stealing from us? Is it stolen stuff
Yes,
that they're working with?
it's completely stolen.
Right.
I believe it's completely stolen, and they're being now going to be very much aided and abetted by politicians
Yeah.
in doing that. So IP is going to go out the window, and I think there's a huge activism job, and I know Equity's trying to do it for performers in Britain, and I hope there's visual artists being represented to try and claw back some of that, sue them, and because their business model doesn't work unless they get this stuff for free.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. So yes, it is stolen, and I think I've been criticised online for even touching this stuff, and that's tricky. But if it's going so fast. My feeling is it's going so fast unless we learn about it and experiment it, and when we. I don't think we can stop this, because if you want to stop this, you have to stop capitalism, and I don't think anyone's succeeded in doing that. So you can be pure and say
Yeah.
never engage with this. I'm going to, do my watercolors and live in the Cotswolds, and it's going to be lovely. Other locations for being an artist are available, but but or you get dirty, you get your hands dirty, and maybe I am doing that, and that is can be quite hard. I have to hold my nose at some of it because I want to get a conversation going to say, what do we believe? What do you think? Is this something that's useful to you? I think it is useful to disabled artists, perhaps as a collaborator, as an enabler through access and also from overcoming other barriers, like never mind the physical access, but the attitudinal barriers or the
Mm,
barriers in the sector. I'm interested. I saw in AI the chance to narrow the gap between artist and audience.
great. And is
So
that just disabled audience? Is that disabled audience or is that
that's
audience?
everybody.
Okay.
So as a disabled artist, or as a theatre artist, there's a tremendous number of hoops which you have to go to, which are gatekept by people.
Yeah.
And I thought, is there a way that we can bypass the gatekeepers? Because it's impossible. It's
And the gatekeepers are the people like, the organizations that get regular funding,
yeah,
the funders, the philanthropy bodies, the sort of
yeah,
the idea that to be an artist you have to be a part of an institution or a structure,
yeah,
as opposed to being an artist is about being creative
yeah.
and being an artist. That do you think that that's sort of a Luddite idea of what artists are?
What my idea of what art?
Yeah,
No, I think that's a good question. Is it a Luddite to want to just engage directly with your audiences and not? I think and I'll explain this because I think how AI can narrow the gap.
yeah,
One of the things that's been talked about is that, and this is coming out this year with increasing rapidity, is AI agents. Now, AI agents are specific domain AI programs, if you like, that can do various jobs. So we're talking about sometime in the next 5 years, perhaps there being a one-person billion-dollar valued company, because all you need is a CEO at the top and 10,000 AI agents, a swarm of AI agents working for this person to achieve whatever objective they were. I thought, well, that's fascinating, good for them. Not really interested in doing that, but what does that mean for artists in just the day to day getting your work on? And could artists, and I know an organization I'm on the board of actually has already tried this, can you get it to fill out funding forms with
yeah.
any success? And they have, and it did succeed. So needed a little bit of trimming, but it worked. Is that happening? Do I marketing? I don't know anything much about marketing, but I can just get my marketing AI to set up a whole campaign. I can get I can start up a conversation through my website or with my pre-trained chat bot about my work based on all the things that I might have done and all the ideas and all the resources that you might already have online and offline trained into that. That might be one thing. You can have your own CEO, or you are the CEO slash artist. You can have your own general manager to do all the Arts Council forms and things like that. That will be possible. So the organizations will increasingly start to shrink anyway because they'll realize I don't need four marketing people anymore. I just need the one guy who's been doing it for 20 years and a bit of AI training, and we're off. And that will cut costs. So, in theatre world, costs will tumble. All costs will tumble.
So at the moment, so you mentioned earlier, 10 years from now, how things might be for, in terms of engagement. So in the world 10 years from now, what you're suggesting is that arts organizations will shrink much more. There'll be a sort of a delineation between live roles, human roles, and AI roles.
Yeah.
And your AI roles are similar to AI agents who are tasked with sort of leading departments, but whole departments, which are all done through AI, so whether marketing or finance or development and fundraising,
Yeah.
those sorts of things, where actually and then the creatives, more of the money would then go to the creative and the work around the artist
If
and the
there is
work in
money
the art,
available, yes. Right.
and then potentially that could then bridge the gap, reduce again costs for organizations, but also in terms of access provision and reducing barriers that are embedded for disabled artists at the moment in terms of creating work.
Yeah, I believe that's okay. But I caveat that by saying if there is money, because there is a much bigger story, which is the least we have to worry about is AI and art in terms of AI. That's the least we have to, because what we're talking about in the next 5 years is that our economy is based on labor and capital, capital and labor, and they have an easy relationship with each other and have done for since the birth of capitalism.
Yeah.
That's about to be severed, so that capital will no longer need labor,
Yeah.
and labor is us. It's
Yeah.
everyone. So the how that is politically, geopolitically, and economically passed over the next 10 years is going to be the biggest question humanity has. So I would say that's one thing that disabled artists will be part of the conversation and could play a big role in is that big political structure, because we've been stuffed by neoliberal economics for the last 20 years already. So we know what's coming. In fact,
Yeah.
I'm working on a show with Caroline Houghton, which exactly deals with what happens when leaders don't need their electorate anymore or don't consider them anymore.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. That's deeply political work.
So have you read the action plan?
Old Keir's thing.
Yes.
Oh God, what can I say about that? I think I don't think anyone really gets it. They don't know what this is.
Right.
They don't know what this is. They think it's a tool, like
Yeah.
the locomotive engine, or the Arkwright's mule. If we're going to go way back, or what if they think it's that? It's an industrial revolution, another industrial revolution, and it's not that. It's an. This sounds so dramatic, but it is completely true. It's an alien invasion.
Okay.
These
So
these things are going to be beings on our planet, which we have to share them with.
so
May have to join with that, or
yes.
or basically, or we may they. I think someone said, I can't remember who said, the best we can hope for is they think we're boring and they'll just leave the planet. Yeah,
So
there's
um
very big artistic questions to do with that. So have
yes.
a crack at that if you dare.
So a bit like when humans invaded nature,
Yeah,
and suddenly nature had to decide which bits to give and which bits to hold on to.
yeah,
So the forests and the trees stayed for as long as they could because they were the deepest roots,
yeah,
and most everything else disappeared. So we I country, sh- plates shifted, things moved, countries, continents were created
yeah,
because they had to, that separation happened. So very much in terms of us, the humans are going to have to decide which ones are going to stay and which ones are going to go as this new alien invasion
yeah,
comes
yeah. I
upon
mean,
us.
what they decide to do with us, I don't know.
Yeah,
We're talking about post a thing called the singularity, which is where the bit we can't predict beyond.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And there's a thing called P Doom, which is
Oh,
and it's only tends to be given to AI researchers, and they're asked, what do you think the chance of AI is of wiping humanity out? And I think 94% of them think it's about 10%.
okay.
But I mean, it's all others think it's 50%.
Yeah.
I'm probably heading more towards 40%, but that's just a figure out my head, really. Then maybe it's just my innate pessimism.
So
But
is there any point then in having an ethical conversation, a conversation about ethics, about morals, about action planning, about policy? Is any of this worth it? Or should we just chow down as artists and go, I'm just gonna make art. I'm gonna, with or without, either in the Cotswolds on my own, with new waters, or I'm gonna jump in and get dirty down and dirty with this stuff and go forth.
I think the latter, which contradicts what I just said about being pessimistic. I think we have to push forward with what and fight what we need to fight and embrace what we need to embrace. I think we have to behave as if we're not going to die tomorrow.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
that's how life goes on. On the day of my death, I will still be writing an arts council form. That's kind of how I think as a human you have to live with hope. whether you choose, not everyone else is able to do that, but I've found in my life that I have actually managed to do that despite some very horrible things. But I won't go into that. I envision, let's say, the the capital Labour break happens, and whether or not it's a fair redistribution of money or not, there's going to be a crisis of meaning for humanity, I think, where we won't. We previously defined by the hierarchies of capitalism, of work, of the dignity of work, the old-fashioned ideas that somehow we are going to work less and less over the next few years. We'll go from 4 to 3 to 2 to 1 day, and eventually, as long as other things don't happen, that may produce quite a nice lifestyle, certainly in the West, for quite a while, and will gradually become unemployed. Now, what happens to people when they're on the job, on the breadline? Then things get very difficult and soulless, and people take drugs and just waste away and live kind of maybe lives of quiet desperation, and that's what they do. But then in other models, let's face it, there's been other communities that have lived without the need for labour for a long time. They're like the aristocracy in Britain, and it will become increasingly involved in games and rituals to sustain meaning. What I think artists, disabled or not, can really play a part in is helping people to refine what humans are for, and it could be rather beautiful. But if we're liberated from work, and perhaps maybe we then have the time to actually be nice to each other, perhaps. But I'm being horribly optimistic now. But but let's say that on a local community level, people have got time to volunteer to help other people. There might be communities of artists who are able to put money at the margins of what they do and really work with their communities, and because then everyone will be in the same boat, to find ways of passing the time which are great, and they start decorating the motorways or whatever they want to do.
So do you think we should start doing that now? Because we are in, for a lot of people, that moment you've talked about, we are there. We're there now. You
Yeah,
know, people are in desperate times. There are conversations about, about healthcare, about education, about food, about health, all of those things those conversations are happening now. They're real, they're live.
yeah,
That, the debate about who should and shouldn't live
yeah,
is live.
yeah,
So should we now be engaging in that idea of
yeah.
purpose?
I mean, definitely, we need to be really alert about what's happening, and really vocal and organized in our
Well,
ways of. It's not enough. Don't get sucked into the social media. This isn't fair. Let's do a meme where you're being placated. It's not. That's not going to change anything, because it never changes anything. We all know it doesn't change anything. There needs to be some serious, on the ground, grassroots political. I mean, this is one of the things. I think one of the questions you want to ask me is, what am I going to do
yeah.
at this? And I don't know which side of the fence I'm going to be on. I'm either going to be getting dirty and trying to do some work around access and helping disabled artists understand this stuff, and building perhaps maybe a podcast. Maybe that's the way to go, and just try and work my way to finding a way to the positive future, which I could see happening, and talking about that and making art. I mean, one of the things I want to do as a theatre maker, and this is about me personally, being able to make art, because I'm an
Mm,
actor, but also probably the most important stuff I do is, or has been what I write. And I think a company around science fiction, making science fiction, will be important, because the world will be operating so fast.
mm.
But the only way we'll be able to understand it is through excavating the sci-fi models we've had in the past, and presenting them and having a look at them, and finding new sci-fi writers to posit different ways of being and different ways of engaging with each other. So that's one thing I might be doing. or I should just I'll be at the barricade trying to stop this. Maybe I'll be doing both, and I'll have to live with that kind of cognitive dissonance.
Mm. So it's sort of like Jordan Peele. Jordan Peele's done that, hasn't he, in film? He sort of is, he's re changed the narrative around horror.
Yeah,
And black people for so long were othered as the devil and as
yeah,
horrible, and that work has come through in what, two or three films in terms of him being
yeah,
at the helm of it. But it took a career for him to get at that point to that point.
indeed. I
So
mean,
how are you going to do that? How are you going to do that?
how am I going to do that? I
Yeah,
don't know yet. I don't know. I am. I I think I'm going to start by reading lots of sci-fi and seeing what's in that way and work out. But in terms of, and I'll try and start an organization, and maybe AI will be a collaborator along the way to make that to narrow that gap between me and my audience. Maybe that's what I'll do. I've got mouths to feed, and that's
yeah.
that's been actually the biggest obstacle to my career in terms of what I do has been the pram in the hallway and remains so. So I kind of negotiate that, but I'm here to engage with people and have conversations and see what happens. I think is at the moment what I'm going to do.
Where you are.
Yeah.
And what has this thrown up anything for you? This DYCP, has it thrown up anything for you? This exploration that you didn't know, that you thought you knew, positive, negative. I mean, it sounds like you've gone on a bit of a journey, and that you're still on it in terms of future. But is there anything sort of the past where you think, you know, we could have, as artists, as disabled people, as activists, could have intervened sooner or engaged sooner, or is it just, life is what it is?
Well, what I've learned is that if you do projects like this one, you need some well-being
Yeah,
attached to it, because to live with this
yeah,
sense and going down a rabbit hole, for hopefully for the good of others, is I mean, it's taken a toll on me in a sense. I'm not a special pleading. I've got myself into this mess, but it's hard. It's hard to do it. It's a space which is really controversial as well, and people rightly are throwing mud at me for doing it, and that I completely respect. But they should want to do that. There's even the things around the climate change stuff, which
yeah.
I haven't really been investigating that because my thing is I think the only way we can solve climate change is through AI. So I
Wow,
so I
that
think
is controversial.
yeah, I don't think that human beings will not be able to stop climate change on their own, and it needs an alien invasion to do it. And that might be what hopefully they'll decide to do, these new creatures, to say, come on, calm down and stop this nonsense. Because things like fusion power will be solved really, really quickly using artificial superintelligence, probably, and many other things, and they'll remodel the world, hopefully, with us involved in that conversation to make it work. So that's the only way. So I'm a pessimist par excellence on that side of things. So unless this goes ahead, but there's huge carbon footprint at the moment involved in it. I'm at the moment making an image of, I haven't finished doing it, but of 1,000 data centers in a desert in an apocalyptic, because I think that's an image. But then the conversation, this image I've just made cost this much in electricity, this much in. So I'm making this and showing you this image, and because I think that there we are. There's an example that AI could be a medium to be explored as a legitimate artist in
Yeah.
that way. I'm taking an ironic approach on that, as is my wont. But I'm sure there are other ways that people can say, "What is this? Is this a new medium?" Because it feels like a medium sometimes.
Well, you see, this was something I was asked about today.
Yeah.
Um, about someone was describing AI as a sector.
Okay.
They were describing the creative industries and AI sectors. And I had a real took me a moment to go, if you are deciding that AI is a sector, then we're gonna have to have a very long conversation about it.
Yeah.
because at the moment it's technology and it's a tool,
Y-
and that's what we're being told it is.
y-
But at the same time, you're describing it as a sector, and if it's a sector, that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah. I'd have to unpick what that exactly means. The word sector colliding with AI doesn't make a lot of sense to me in the view of what this thing is, what I've said it is.
Yeah,
Maybe it's an organ. It's pushing it on from the tool. It's a tool
yeah.
debate, so that you can be credited with that. But
But this
it's
is in. I mean,
it's
this
so
is in.
invasive in everything to say
Yeah,
it's one thing on its own. It's not
yeah.
going to be one thing on its own. It's going to be everything from making a coffee in the morning to firing the nuclear missiles at night. It's kind of, yeah,
I think of it as superhuman,
yes,
as superhuman. So well, outside of the human that I know, and the human that I know, not just the human that I know as a disabled person, but the human that I've lived amongst,
yeah.
the non-disabled human that I've lived amongst. So it's the next level of human for me. That's how I describe it. So
So an
so
evolution,
it's
like,
yeah, yeah. So it's an evolution, and it's two or three steps away from me, but it's still outside of me. Now it's something that so then I can choose to engage or not engage with it.
yeah.
But I got to figure out what my terms are first.
Well, will you be able to? And the reason I mean, at one level, there's the stark kind of Elon Musk's Neuralink.
Yeah,
He says we need to meld with the machines and get,
that's my fight. That is my fight
yeah.
to remain non-mechanical.
But do you use a phone?
Yes,
It's already in you.
yeah, but it's still a fight that I'm having,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I want to have.
Yeah.
But I don't update my phone, so my phone is 10 years old.
Well, then yeah. Then great. I wish I was you.
Yeah,
Is it?
I don't update my phone. But I update my computers.
Yeah.
But it takes me back to when I used to do, the conversation you're having about the climate. What you were saying about climate. It takes me back to when we used to make film, and the amount of time it took to render,
Yeah.
and how that's changed over 30 years
Yeah.
in terms of filmmaking.
You
But
had a play
actually,
with the runway apps. Had a
yeah,
look at them. I mean, when I think that at the moment AI kind of give it a prompt and then it goes and does its thing and you decide whether you like it or not. And so part of making work with AI is a process of curation with
yeah,
a very uncooperative kind of collaborator.
collaborator, yes, it's
But
passive engagement.
if that's increasingly going to turn into more of a Photoshop relationship where, okay,
Yeah,
can we just airbrush that bit out and change it to that? And can we do that? Can we maybe put the camera over here and do that and get them to say that to that and then look away at the camera? And could you put, and that we're not at the level of doing emotions for actors yet, but could you, be a little more emotional because you're feeling grief at this moment, and gradually that will be the way of making films, I think,
yeah.
and there will be Tom Hanks because he'll have sold his digital artificial performances up into the cloud, and
Yeah, which James Earl Jones has done. So
yeah,
now that he's gone, there will be. I can see it in 3 to 5 years a new film with James Earl Jones in.
right. I'm
Yeah,
looking forward to seeing it.
I have
It'll be
no
a
doubt.
gimmick at that. Well, this is an interesting thing, actually. This is a thing I wanted to talk about. Is that if you see something really impressive, a film or something like a short film, and you don't know it's AI, you'll judge it on its own
Yeah, on
and
its
say, "Oh,
merits.
that's interesting," or whatever it is, or that doesn't look like that, whatever it is. The normal process of critiquing it operates. But and this might be sentimental, but I just feel at the moment it's an AI, it loses any soul.
I think it does at the moment, but
Yeah,
but I think that if the inevitable, as
yeah,
what you've described happens, then it won't, because it will be a collaborator, that it will be somebody that you work with,
yeah,
and the soul. will come through in that because it comes as with all
Well,
relationships
that's my point.
with creatives, the
Your soul
soul comes through.
won't be that AI doesn't have a soul
No,
yet.
but it comes through. It will yet, yes,
I
but
think
it
that's to
comes
do.
through. You
Yeah,
know, it's like cameras, right? When cameras first started and photography first started, it
yeah,
was just a picture. And then once people started to build a relationship with the camera, and that lens being an extension of them, that conversation completely changed. You know, listening to Kate Winslet talk about her latest films, the Lee Miller thing, where she was talking about walking, you know, spending time with the camera, so she got used to it. So she understood it was a part of her.
yeah,
It wasn't just something that you would pick up and take pictures with. Or Alan, you know, turning, you know, talking about AI and his relationship with the machine. And all of those things, I think, are things that are exciting about what could happen. But I think we've got to make them happen as artists. We've got to actively, intentionally make them happen. And as disabled artists,
yeah,
I think it's really important that we are having this conversation.
yeah,
So I want to thank you for doing this work. You know, it is challenging to do work that is outside of people's comfort zones.
yeah,
And I think that, I mean, this surface scratching is all you've done, but
yeah,
I think it's an itch that will, you know, go deeper, and will at some point, you know, you'll see people will start to see the flesh, and then it'll get to the
yeah,
bone, and it will really start to ignite an intelligent, sophisticated, more sophisticated conversation, and I think a more aware conversation about what these things are and what they can be and could
yeah.
be.
Yeah, I think you're
Thank
on
you.
something there at the end here is the idea that we may be able to put our soul into this
Yeah.
soulless thing. And
If I'm gonna if you know, if it's all done and dusted,
yeah,
then, you know, I'm not the greatest person or the best person in the world. We're not the greatest people in the world. Humans are, you know, got so many flaws about them, but we have souls. And I think that if we can then, if in some way we can impart our souls into this,
yeah,
so that so what happens next has soul, because we got soul from somewhere. So if what happens next has soul, then great.
yeah. Well, steady, Debs. I think we're on the verge of being optimistic. I mean, I don't think this is.
Well, no, that's not going to happen.
No, no, it never happened. Okay, that's good. I think that's a good place to end, Debs, isn't it?
I think that's good. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much. Smashing.